This might be the most uncomfortable budgeting method I've ever tried, because once the money is gone, it's gone. Hi, I'm Dave, and I'm terrible with money, but I'm trying to fix it. I had been looking for some kind of budgeting method that would actually work on me. Not in theory, not in a clean little app demo. On me. A real person. A person who has downloaded budgeting apps with sincere hope and then ignored them like abandoned New Year's resolutions. Every app promised to fix my spending. None of them did. They gave me categories, graphs, notifications, little motivational colors. Very impressive. Still broke. I don't think apps failed because they were bad. I think they failed because I was too comfortable with invisible money. And a number on a screen never really slowed me down. And if anything, it made spending feel weirdly clean. Too clean, too easy. I could move money around, tap a card, make a purchase, and barely feel anything in the moment. The apps gave me information, but they didn't change my behavior. And apparently, information was not my problem. Apparently, I needed consequences I could actually feel. Then I found this old school method, envelope budgeting. And honestly, the fact that it looked like something your grandparents would use made me trust it more. The idea is simple. You take your budget, split it into categories, put cash into envelopes, and spend from those envelopes only. Food, transport, fun, and the rule is brutally clear. If the envelope is empty, you stop spending. No magical transfer. No, I'll fix it later. Empty means done. So I pulled out cash and started building the system. Food envelope, transport envelope, fun envelope. Watching real bills leave my hand and go into different envelopes already felt weirdly serious. This already feels more real than my banking app. And that was the first thing that surprised me. Nothing had even happened yet. I hadn't bought anything. But somehow, this felt heavier than tapping numbers into an app ever did. Like, my money had suddenly become visible enough to judge me. Even the counting part felt different. With digital money, I mostly look at totals. With cash, I had to physically separate choices. This pile is food. This pile is transport. This pile is fun. And once I did that, I could already feel one uncomfortable truth creeping in. Some categories looked smaller than I wanted them to, which is funny because those are the exact categories I usually pretend are flexible when I'm using a card. Cash made the limits visible before I even started making mistakes. Digital money is dangerous because it's quiet. You tap a card and it feels like a tiny gesture. You send money and it barely registers emotionally. But cash? Cash has weight. Cash has texture. Cash makes you pause for half a second longer than you want to. It turns spending into a physical event. And apparently I had built my entire financial life around avoiding that feeling. The first real test was the grocery store. I grabbed a few normal things, walked to the register, and paid with cash. And wow, that hurt. Not in a dramatic life is over way, just in a very honest, very immediate way. I could actually feel the money leaving. My hand had to let go of it. There was no little tap, no emotional buffering, just me, the bills, and the uncomfortable truth that spending feels different when you physically watch your budget get smaller. And then I had this ridiculous little reaction I was not prepared for. The cashier handed me my change, and I looked at the remaining bills like we had all just been through something together. That's when I realized how disconnected I had become from the physical sensation of spending. My card had turned purchases into a non-event. Cash made them feel like decisions again. Annoying decisions, helpful decisions, but definitely decisions. A few days later, I ordered coffee, just coffee, $5, totally normal. Then I opened my fun envelope and realized that was half my fun budget for the week. That's half my fun budget for the week. Suddenly, the coffee was no longer just $5. It was half of something limited. That changed everything. Because the envelope didn't let me pretend the purchase was isolated. It forced me to see what that choice meant for the rest of the week. That was a frustrating moment, honestly. And not because I couldn't afford coffee in some absolute sense, but because I could suddenly see the trade-off. With a card, there is no visible trade-off. You just buy the thing and deal with your confusion later. With the envelope, every purchase competes with every future purchase in the same category. Coffee wasn't just coffee anymore. It was coffee versus anything else I might want this week. And for a person who is used to letting future Dave absorb the damage, that was deeply inconvenient. And then, of course, the fridge entered the story again. I'd open it, see almost nothing inside, and immediately start negotiating with myself like a financially confused, maybe I should use the food envelope instead, which, to be fair, is probably a more responsible sentence than anything I've ever said while holding an iced coffee. The fridge became weirdly useful because it kept dragging me back to reality. The fun envelope wanted coffee. The food envelope wanted survival. And every time those two priorities met in my kitchen, one of them looked way more adult than the other. It's hard to romanticize impulse spending when your refrigerator looks like it lost custody of groceries. By the end of the first week, the system started exposing my habits in a way apps never did. Not because the math was better, the math was actually simpler, but the consequences were harder to ignore. Every envelope had edges, limits, a visible ending. The envelope would literally tell me whether I was fine. And that level of honesty was not always emotionally convenient. Then came the real struggle. A few days later, fun envelope was almost empty. Naturally, that was also the exact moment I started seeing ads for things I suddenly needed. 50% off today. Limited offer, last chance. Old me would have bought this instantly. But Envelope Dave has problems. Specifically, Envelope Dave has $7 left and a very visible relationship with reality. That was the thing I hated and respected about this method at the same time. It removed my ability to be vague. With digital money, I could always blur the edges. I could tell myself I'd spend less later. I could mentally borrow from some imaginary future version of me who was apparently much more disciplined. The envelope method killed that fantasy immediately. If there was no money in fun, there was no spending from fun. End of discussion. And that forced me into a kind of planning I usually avoid. I started thinking ahead. If I buy this now, what happens later? If I burn through fun by Wednesday, do I really want to spend the rest of the week pretending I'm okay with that? The envelope didn't just limit me, it made future consequences visible. And apparently I make much better decisions when future consequences are standing right there in paper form. Something weird started happening after that. I started thinking before I bought things, not because I'd become wise, let's not get carried away, but because the money was visible now. I could see what was leaving, I could see what would be left, and that tiny bit of friction changed my behavior more than any app reminder ever had. I started asking myself, do I actually need this? Or do I just want the feeling of buying something right now? That question showed up everywhere. In grocery aisles, at the coffee shop, while scrolling late at night. Even at home, when boredom started suggesting that maybe online shopping counted as a personality. The method didn't make me perfect, it made me pause. And honestly, that pause was doing a lot of heavy lifting because a lot of my bad spending decisions were never built to survive 5 extra seconds of thought. Then I started noticing smaller changes too. I planned better. I bought, fewer random things. I stopped assuming I could just figure it out later. Even transport felt different when I knew exactly how much cash was left in that envelope. The categories stopped being abstract labels and started feeling like real boundaries. Annoying boundaries sometimes, but real. And real boundaries are apparently much harder for me to ignore than colorful app notifications. And that led to a real self-realization moment for me. I kept thinking my issue was income or motivation or the fact that I hadn't found the right app yet. But the deeper problem was behavior. Digital money made my behavior too easy to ignore. When money stayed invisible, my choices stayed invisible too. And when choices feel invisible, they feel harmless. That was the lie I had been living in. When money is digital, spending doesn't always feel real. It feels smooth, delayed, but when the money is physical, the cost becomes physical too. You literally watch your options disappear. You feel your budget shrink in your hand, and apparently that sensation was exactly what I had been missing. Not more information, more friction, more honesty, more moments where I had to actually see the choice instead of just tapping past it. Apps try to make budgeting easier, but sometimes making it harder actually works better because harder means you notice it. Harder means you feel it. Harder means your spending can't hide behind convenience. And for someone like me, that turned out to be incredibly useful. Turns out envelopes are smarter than me. Spending is easy when money is invisible, but when you see it, you think twice. If this was helpful, subscribe and hit like. I'll see you in the next one.